Part two, here we go. What am I talking about? Lessons learned from 50 years of working and having 25 plus jobs and side hustles. I just got done with part one. Here we go in part two. I've counted about 25 jobs that I've had over my lifetime. And I started work early. I needed to make money. And as a little kid, I wanted a bike. I wanted to buy a new yo-yo. I wanted to buy a kite. All these things that we did in the neighborhood, and obviously, it was a three-channel TV system with rabbit ears. That's all we had. So, man, we were outside. We were outside a lot. We were fishing. We were flying kites. We were playing stickball. We were playing soccer. And this is growing up in Miami, and it's hotter than anything, man. And we were cooking out there. But um, that was life. That's all we knew. But I knew that if I needed to buy something, you know, my parents were limited. My home life was a mess. And so I hustled early and I realized that I could do some odd jobs and make some money. I just went through a list of things in the previous video, but here we go. As I got older and hit 16, I was able to buy a car because of all those little jobs that I had. I saved some money and I bought my mom's car that pretty much died in the driveway. It was a 1968 Ford Galaxy 500. Big, it was white, it was heavy, and it only had a six-cylinder, so that thing couldn't get out of its own way. But once I got bought that car, I had to have the head rebuilt. The heads were the valves were stuck, so I rebuilt the heads, got that thing running, and off I went. So now that I could drive, it was incredible. So instead of me mowing lawns and throwing newspapers, now I could go down to a local hotel or restaurant, and one of my jobs was to be a busboy. And I lived in Osceola County, which is near Disney, and there were scores and scores of hotels and restaurants that people would come to the area, they'd stay at the hotel, they would go into the restaurant, they would eat, get on a bus, and then they went right to Disney. So these type of service jobs were plentiful. So once I got my car, I was able to go down and get a job as a busboy at a hotel. And that job, I was able to work plenty during the summer and also on the weekends. However, I did play sports in high school. I was a baseball player, and so I had practice every day after school. And sometimes we had a work day to go clean the baseball field on Saturdays, but Sundays and any other time I was working. Why was I working? Because I needed gas money. I needed, to buy stuff for school. I played baseball, so I needed new cleats every year. I needed a glove. I needed some uniform stuff, and I needed lunch money, and most of all, I needed to have money for the weekends because we would go Friday night. We go to the football game. I had to pay $2 to get in. We'd go to the high school dance, which I had to pay $2 to get in, and maybe a drink or a hot dog or whatever. But my parents, they weren't giving any money, and so I had to earn it for myself. But um, busboy. I had another job that I did, Wendy's hamburger. I only worked that for a couple of weeks because I got hired, and they only gave me two hours a week. I mean, and I think I was like 14 or 15, and my parents had to give me a ride, and they weren't giving me enough hours. But I remember wearing the Wendy's uniform. I think I had a hat, and I was on the grill cooking hamburgers and cooking fries, and um, I don't even know if we had a I don't even know if we had a drive-through window back in the 1970s, but I didn't last too long at that. What did I learn at that job? That they didn't pay me enough, they didn't give me enough hours, and I didn't stay there because they were just trying to fit me in the schedule. Um, Another job I had was working in, I guess, housekeeping at a hotel. And what did I do? I was during the summer, I would go around when the maids took the linens off the beds and the towels, and they would throw them out on the sidewalk by the front door. I pushed one of those big canvas carts, and I would load it all into the bag, go get all the linens, and upstairs and downstairs we would push it down to the housekeeping department, where the ladies actually we had to help load them into these big washers and then the dryers, and then we would deliver them back to the maids so they can restock the room. But that was that was an okay job, and I would have like 8 hours, and believe it or not, it was kind of physical because we had to unload all those towels. But another job, another experience. I was developing skills, and I don't even know how long I did that one. Probably for a summer or two. Um, But now this is in the 80s. I got out of high school in 81, and working at these hotels gave me customer experience, um, being accountable for my work. Many times I was able to help guests and customers and get tips. Um, but something happened right after high school. This is like 1981. I got out of high school. Now, because of Disney out there, they were going to open up a new theme park, and it was called Epcot. What is Epcot? Okay, I forget what it stands for. If you know what Epcot stands for, put it in the comment. I think it's Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow, something like that. But so there were guys that I knew right out of high school that were getting jobs at Epcot. Doing what? They were getting jobs as laborers. These were guys that were digging ditches, hauling stuff, loading stuff, helping other people, but it was union. Now, what is union? Well, a lot of you people who live up north know what a union is, and the union scale pays higher. And it was double of what we were making here. And so, as a laborer, I think I was making $10 or $12 an hour. That's a game changer for someone who's 18 out of high school. And so I worked for an electrical company, and all I had to do was before the electricians would come in and lay pipe, I had to dig a ditch, and they would put the PVC pipe in there. They'd run cable, and then once they're ready, we had to backfill. And then if it was really deep, we had to use these machines where we'd have to tamp it down, and then they'd have to go through inspection and make sure everything is compacted, and then once it's approved, we would go on to the next one. But I worked there for a year and a half, and I was living at home, and and so I was making like $12 an hour for 40 hours. If you work over 40 hours, you got time and a half, and then if you work on Sundays, you get double time. That was like $24 an hour. So here I am making these checks of $600 to $800 a week. And in 1982, are you kidding me? We all were like, this is incredible. And I stayed there for a year and a half. I was living at home. And so I was saving lots and lots of money. And I was giving my mom, I don't know, 50 bucks a week, 200 bucks a month just for me to stay there, just to help her out. But working construction, what did that lead me, or what did that teach me? That I did not want to do this the rest of my life. Now, I learned other trades. There were electricians, there were concrete, there were iron workers, there were all these guys that had these programs where you could get into an apprenticeship while you're working there and be paid, and then work up to be a journeyman in the electrical trade, or concrete, or iron workers. So my mind was um, opened up. to what's going on in the world. Um, but I really didn't, excuse me, I didn't want to work construction. What did I want to do? In the distance of by the way, I worked at the Imagination Pavilion. So when you walk into Epcot and you see the big globe, just beyond that, there's a place called Imagination Pavilion. That's where I worked. So if you picture 20 feet below everything, that's where I was digging ditches and helping, for a year and a half, helping these electricians put in all the wiring. It was amazing. But in the distance, I could see that Disney was building hotels. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And I have hotel experience, but no. I have motel experience. They're building hotels, resorts. Now, this is a whole nother layer, a whole nother level. And this is, people coming from all over the world and people that could afford to come and stay for 4, 6, 8 days. And I started to think about, man, I like to work at a hotel. So I finished up working at Epcot maybe around 84. And I was living at home. Now, I think I'm like 18, 19 years old. My mom, okay, this is kind of crazy. So we used to get the newspaper delivered to our house. Every Sunday was the employment section. So that is a big, thick part of the paper that you had to open up, and it had a list of all the jobs in Central Florida. Everything from hotel, motel, sales, car sales, you name it, it was in this paper. So there was no website, you know, it was it was a newspaper. And so we went through and looked, and my mom said, she says, Kevin, do you know that there's a hotel in the Disney area called the Lake Buena Vista Palace? This is 1984. And she says, there's an ad. They need valet parkers. What the heck is that valet parker? And she goes, those are the guys that park the guest cars when they come in, maybe to a restaurant or to check in. You unload the luggage and then you go park the car. And I thought, hmm. And she says they also get tips. I'm going like, oh, okay. So me and actually two of my other buddies, we get in a car, we drive all the way out to Lake Buena Vista. We drive out to this dirt place, and there was a trailer. And we went in and applied. We had paper and pencil. We applied for these jobs as a valet parker. And so then we drove all the way, went home, and um, out of the three of us, I was the only one that got a call. And I think it's because my mom was home. She answered the phone. The phone or the mail was the only communication. And so my mom took the message, and I called the guy back and I said, yeah, I got your message, and I would like to interview for this job. So I drove all the way back out there and had an interview. This is a long story, but I got a job as a valet parker at the Lake Buena Vista Palace. This is 700 rooms. It costs hundreds of dollars to stay each night. There's these suites and conventions, and this is a busy place. But being a valet parker, I was getting tipped every time I brought a car up. So my first day, actually, it took a week or two to figure all out. But I got an hourly, like $3 an hour, but I started to make like $50 a day. And I would go home like, I just made $50 of cash. So for the week, now I'm making $250 a week, maybe $300 in cash. Holy goodness, my life was changing. And I was only working 6 or 7 hours a day. I'd work from like 7 a.m. till 3 in the afternoon. That was it. And my life was changing. What did I learn? Commitment, smiling, giving my all, helping guests, being a team player, and having gratitude that my pockets were filling up. Oh my gosh, I was freaking out. This and one of the biggest things that I learned was all these people coming from all over the world and they had money. They had money to spend. And here I am, just never exposed to anything, never really been on vacation anywhere. I'm seeing a whole nother side of the world. This was part two. If there's anything I said that you like, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, give me a comment. What's one job that you had when you were 18 and 19 that opened your eyes and said, man, either I don't want to do that or I do want to do that? All right, now you got to stick with me to get to part three.